Let's be honest, 90% of the companies opened in Portugal over the last, say, 2 or 3 years were opened using an outdated system. I'm not saying everything is bad. I'm saying that perhaps you need to reconsider your jurisdiction in light of the new trends in 2026. Most likely, Portugal was sold to you on the premise of moving there and opening a business at the same time. In parts, yes, that's true. But the model currently in place in Portugal is outdated. And if Portugal was sold to you as move first, figure it out later, well, you were sold a service, but not a system. Today, I want to talk about Portugal from a business scaling perspective and how Portugal can be seen as a gateway to moving further into Europe. My name is Sveta Jeremej. I'm a managing partner at Forma Flaga, and we specialize in building international business architecture. So let's talk very briefly about how companies are actually opened in Portugal. The most common scenario is when we open a simple empresa na hora, the so-called company in an hour. Of course, you can open it yourself. It's not a particularly complex procedure if you are physically here within the country. However, if we're talking about a business we plan to scale, then certain clauses must be written into your articles of association, and there must be specific regulations. We need to see which bank is suitable for all your payments, because not all banks will approve your transactions, and so on and so forth. So this is a very important point that needs to be addressed first and foremost. I mean, you can just open a sole proprietorship and start working, but then we're not talking about scaling. Congratulations, you've opened a company, but the main point is that now in Portugal and elsewhere, you need to have a physical office. What do I mean by that? A while ago, you could actually rent a kind of virtual office in some co-working space just by paying a small nominal fee. But nowadays, banks, even banks, will go out and physically verify the actual place of business. That is, they want to see a specific office, whether it's a lease or a purchase of some real estate, it doesn't matter, and there must be active employees. Ideally, these should be local employees for whom you pay social security contributions, and so on and so forth. So, in the current realities of 2026, you won't be able to just open an online company and make good money. So, when talking about Portugal, I don't just mean the mainland. I also want to mention 2 islands that you've probably heard of, which are Madeira and the Azores. Now, I'd briefly like to mention Madeira as it's interesting from a tax optimization standpoint. For example, if the tax rate on the mainland is 21% on average, then on Madeira you can reduce it to 5%, but under certain conditions that you'll have to meet. I know my entrepreneurs are smart people, so you've likely heard of the so-called preferential tax status in Portugal, where there were no taxes on dividends, for instance, or there was a reduced tax rate. So in Portugal, there are still some special regimes specifically for investment companies, for example, or for some digital nomads. But we're not talking about them now. We're talking about business, about big business. So if you're interested in discussing your specific situation, get in touch and we will help you specifically. We very briefly discussed mainland Portugal and touched on Madeira with its special regime. So what about the Azores? And in the Azores, there are no special regimes in terms of having to meet certain conditions or making it by a certain time. In the Azores, there's just a great tax rate from 13 to 14%, much lower than on the mainland and much lower than in any other jurisdiction. So turn your attention to the Azores. And even though we've talked about Portugal as a mainland and the islands of Madeira and the Azores, I want to say that you can split your business, your operational business, even within Portugal. That is, offices can be in the Azores, yes. Tax optimization can follow a specific program of a particular island. Business scaling, you can sign contractors from all over Europe, and so on. So it's not necessary to focus everything in one specific place, one specific location. At our company, Forma Flaga, we don't just consult, we reassemble your business, scale your business, and lead to a good result for you. And as per tradition, a short case study from our clients, a very simple situation for those who are in Portugal. A very common story is when on the mainland, you might apply, for example, to open a corporate bank account, and you might be refused for various reasons. It needs looking into, but nevertheless, on the islands, the client was approved for a corporate bank account and Plus, a business loan was approved. Portugal as a whole offers many different interesting solutions for your business, but I want to emphasize that maybe not only Portugal will suit you. We work with a number of countries for business that we can offer specifically for your situation. So don't hesitate, write to us. We will definitely get in touch and discuss such solutions.